Hi, everybody. It's really great to be here. It's quite an intimidating place, but I'm going to do the best I can with all of the stuff that's sort of floating around in my head after all of the wonderful idea sharings this morning. I am the principal at an elementary school, and after hearing Scott, I can tell that he is not in the elementary world and in high school because there's no longer nap time. Snacks do not get delivered to the classroom. So there's lots of changes that have happened. There's a lot of expectations that are on children at a very young age. And so what I'm going to share today are some of the experiences that I've had with children in different settings, and primarily in my role as principal at PS7. And I am hoping that you'll be able to make some connections to the wonderful ideas and theory that we've heard here this morning. So this young lady is actually 5 years old in this picture, and she's a kindergartner. And she is standing next to her work in our professional art gallery, where the students' work, as you can probably tell from the photograph, is shared in a very professional way. And it's not just focused on that end product, but it's focused on the process that children have gone through. And so a part of the transformation in our school community over the past 4 years has been to not focus on what the children are producing, to not focus on that piece of writing or that drawing or the painting, but to focus on the process and the learner. And so before we could do that, we had to get through some challenges. The biggest challenge was being able to connect the day-to-day work with that bigger picture. So we heard about missions of schools, and there's a lot of talk right now about national standards and what does it really mean to be a part of public education or private education. What are we trying to do here? And we're trying to prepare children for their future because, as we heard through several talks this morning and in the last video, we are relying on the children of today to take care of us in the future. So there's this concept that I call learned behavior, and we've heard it in different forms this morning. But before we can get to focusing on the learning, we have to get through some of the things that children understand as their role in school and that teachers understand. It was refreshing to hear that Michael spends his time teaching teachers to be creative. And if you're a teaching artist in this room, then I'm sure that's very much a part of your role. And I know that from being a teacher who collaborated with a teaching artist. I didn't have the arts when I was young. I didn't have someone saying, go ahead and paint what you think this sounds like. I had marshmallows, and we were expected to all make snowmen that all looked the same, right? Little pretzel arms, which was a fun activity, but it didn't teach me anything about being creative. Thank you. I move around a lot, so it's just a part of how I present, I guess. And there's this idea of unwritten perceptions, and so teachers are teaching in classrooms, and there's this idea that when people come in to see what's happening in the classroom, they're coming in to look at me and judge what I'm doing, or rather what I'm not doing. And so we had to break that perception. We had to break the idea that it's okay to teach with your door closed and just keep what you do between you and the children in your room, because you're not going to get any better at the work that you do if you're not open to sharing that. And so we had to break this perception that we're here to judge what's happening in the classroom. We're here to judge the person teaching in the classroom. And that this is about this continuous growth and continuous learning. So we had to shift our focus, to learning itself. Before we could do that, we had to determine what our common understanding of learning is. So we're all going to walk into a classroom and we're going to focus on the learning, and we're going to somehow measure what's working for those children and what is not working so that we can change our behavior. We had to have a common understanding of what learning is. A big part of the work that we've done at PS7 over the past 4 years is to define things that people think they already know. So lots of people say, well, I know what learning is. I've been a learner. I went to school, right? We hear that all the time. I went to school, so how is school any different than it was when I was there? And so we defined things, and there were times when we had to say, this is our definition of learning, or this is our definition of quality learning for the purpose of the work that we're doing. In doing this work with adults and through my work, my collaboration with DreamYard as a classroom teacher, through my work as an instructional coach, my work as an assistant principal, and now as principal, it's always embedding that rationale. Because if people don't know why we're doing what we're doing, then it feels really scary. And I'm going to make assumptions about why we're doing what we're doing because you haven't told me. Well, the same is true with children. Children should know why they're going through the process. What difference does this all make? Is it just to produce a painting? Is it just to stand on stage one day and move around? Or is there more embedded in that work? And so a part of this measuring learning is to focus on the skills. And that's what I'm really going to get into talking about today, and I hope that you walk away with after today. And you've heard this in lots of different ways, but this idea that we're about more than a particular project. It's more than a 6-week unit of study where children perform at the end, but it's that process that children go through. It's the ability to find and filter information. It's the ability to make sense of the world around you, because we all know that the only constant, the only thing we really do know is that the future is unknown. The jobs that our children will have are unknown. So filter and find and filter information. If you've ever used a search engine on the World Wide Web, which I'm sure you have, you get a bazillion things that pop up, some that are relevant, some that are irrelevant. If you work with children and you've ever asked them to research something at home, those that have computers and printers come in, I've experienced this, 45 pages thick, and they've got, you know, every idea printed out. But one way that we've taught children to find and filter information is by going through a playground design process. And so it was very exciting as a school community to receive a $1 million grant from the mayor's office to install a playground, a real playground with trees and slides and whatever the children could imagine. Instead of saying, oh, we think the kids would really like this, this, and this, we created design teams. And those teams of children from kindergarten, the age of 5, up to 5th grade, the age of 11, children were out researching, finding information, bringing it back to their classmates, and then making decisions from there. So based on that information, our children, I'm just going to give this to you because it doesn't work. Thanks. So based on the information that we find and we collect and we filter and we make sense of, now we need to be able to make informed decisions. And so the children were at home this January and they were watching the news with their parents and families, and they said, wow, there was this tragedy in Haiti, and there are people suffering in Haiti, and there are families and children just like us, and what can we do to help them? Now, it doesn't directly connect with the state standards. It doesn't directly connect with the curriculum, but it was a moment. It was a moment in our world where the children knew, hey, I want to do something about this, but I don't know how. And so they turned to the adults in their world, the adults in their school, and they said to us, what can we do? And so the children went through a process of planning and implementing a walkathon and a student talent show, which we've never had before. It was a lot of fun. 15 acts. We had to filter some of the music that was used, but that's another story. And we raised over $4,000 and donated that to UNICEF. So it's going beyond those standards to make informed decisions. The ability to think critically in order to problem solve, not just like sit and think about things, but have a purpose in mind and be able to ask questions. When I went to school, we were taught not to ask questions. We were taught not to pick up books. I actually got in trouble because I had my book inside of my textbook, and that was a no-no. You couldn't read things that you wanted to. We just heard from Dan, the math teacher, that children just don't have the ability to follow through. The perseverance is not quite there. And so being able to teach that to children and teaching children that there's no right or wrong, but that you can just make decisions. And so in making a difference, the children created public service announcements where not only the arts were integrated, but also technology, which was very exciting. And then this ability to communicate. We communicate in lots of different ways. Children are communicating. Text message, right? They get in trouble for that as well, because it's either under the desk or it's under their sheets at night when they're supposed to be sleeping. But this idea of communicating to a particular audience with a very clear purpose in mind, and doing so at a professional level. So I'm going to share two quick stories of how we did this. We had students that produced a video, and there was a whole process that went along with it, but in order to honor their work, we rolled out a red carpet. Literally, I bought a red carpet. It was made of paper, but it was still a red carpet. We rolled it down the center of the auditorium, and as children, we filled the auditorium, and as children were introduced, the audience was just going wild, and you've got 8-year-olds waving and blowing kisses, and it was just a really special event. The picture that you're seeing here is a group of children who published their own magazine. They went to lots of different places in New York City and they published their magazine. They presented this magazine, again, to an auditorium full of peers and adults, and then we set up a signing table, and that's how we honored and celebrated their work that day. It's about making connections. That's what the arts do. We all love what we do, but the arts help us to make connections for children, to bring that curriculum, that content that we have to cover, the content that we do need to acknowledge, that does need to be a part of the way that children think and the way that children are, and it makes connections, it brings it to life. So as we heard from a colleague this morning, as you go forward in your work, deliver the magic and have fun doing it. Thanks so much for your time.